Hard work pays off. It's kind of cliche, but it's, so true.
Tyler Cameron Ennis McIntyre, born August 24th, 1994. Tyler Ennis wasn't expected to play for 4 different teams in 4 years and be out the league in the same amount of time. He didn't rely on speed, flash, or hype. He played the game like a veteran way before his time. At Syracuse, he looked like the safest guard in the country, calm, efficient, in control, the kind of player coaches trust immediately. But while others grew into the league, Ennis seemed to get left behind by it. No scandal, no major controversy, just a slow burn that barely anyone talks about. And that's what makes his story so strange, easy to forget, and unbelievable at the same time. What happened? Let's talk about it. Salute to Sam.T35 on IG for this request. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth. Let's get it. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. Tyler Ennis is a 6'2" point guard from Brampton, Ontario, who built his reputation on intelligence and composure rather than flash. At Father Henry Carr High School, he separated himself with poise, decision-making, and an advanced feel for the game. While others relied on athleticism, Ennis controlled pace, limited mistakes, and consistently made the right reads, traits that made him one of Canada's top prospects. As a senior, he earned MVP honors, cementing his status as one of the best guards in his class. Ranked inside the top 25 nationally, he committed to Syracuse, a program known for structure and discipline, a natural fit for his style. Ennis stepped in immediately as the Orange's starting point guard and never looked overwhelmed. He averaged 12.9 points and 5.5 assists, guiding Syracuse to a 25-0 start. His calm presence stood out on a roster full of experience, and he quickly became one of the most trusted freshmen in the country. His defining moment came in the 2014 NCAA tournament when he drilled a game-winning 3 at the buzzer against Pittsburgh. The shot became a symbol of his poise under pressure and elevated his national profile overnight. By season's end, Ennis was viewed as one of the safest prospects in the draft, a smart, efficient floor general expected to transition smoothly to the NBA. Stunt number 1, built for the wrong era. Tyler Ennis entered the NBA with something most young guards didn't have: trust. Coaches believed in his decision-making, his composure, and his ability to run a team without forcing the issue. He played with patience, read defenses early, and rarely made mistakes. But the league he entered was no longer built to reward those traits on their own. By the time Ennis arrived, the point guard position was evolving rapidly. Teams were prioritizing size, athleticism, and shot creation over control. Guards were expected to collapse defenses, score at all 3 levels, and create advantages without help. Efficiency still mattered, but explosiveness was becoming the baseline. Ennis, for all his intelligence, didn't possess that extra gear. He wasn't slow, but he wasn't strong enough to finish through contact. And while his jumper was reliable, it didn't demand defensive attention the way elite shot creators did. As a result, everything he did had to be nearly perfect to matter. Once in the NBA rotation, that reality became unavoidable. Defenders went under screens, passing lanes closed quicker. The margin for error shrank with every possession. What once looked like composure began to look like hesitation in a league speeding up around him. The NBA was also shifting toward guards who could thrive in chaos, players who could generate offense even when structure broke down. Ennis thrived in structure, but chaos was becoming the currency of success. Coaches wanted players who could bend the game, not just read it. It wasn't that he couldn't play, it was that the version of basketball he mastered was quietly being phased out. His strengths still existed, but they were no longer prioritized and no longer protected by the system. Ennis didn't fail because he lacked intelligence or discipline. He arrived at the wrong moment, carrying the right skills for a league that no longer existed. And once reality set in, the margin for survival disappeared fast. Stunt number 2, buried behind the depth chart. If the league's evolution made it difficult for Tyler Ennis, his situation in Phoenix made it nearly impossible. The Suns were not a developmental environment. They were a franchise searching for direction, cycling through coaches, rosters, and timelines with little patience for long-term growth. When Ennis arrived, the backcourt was already crowded. Goran Dragic was the established leader, Eric Bledsoe and Isaiah Thomas demanded touches, and the team were constantly evaluating new guards. There was no defined path for Ennis to grow into. He wasn't being groomed, he was being tested. Minutes came inconsistently, often tied to injuries or short-term needs. One night he played rotation minutes, the next he barely touched the floor. For a player whose game relied on rhythm and confidence, this instability was crippling. Development requires continuity, and Ennis never received it. Every appearance felt like an audition. One missed rotation or rush decision could cost weeks of opportunity. Instead of learning through mistakes, he was punished for them. That kind of pressure doesn't nurture growth, it suppresses it. As Phoenix continued reshaping its roster, Ennis became increasingly expendable. Younger prospects were cycled in, veterans were prioritized, and the franchise focused on survival rather than development. By the time Ennis began to adjust, the organization had already moved on. He wasn't pushed out because he couldn't play, he was pushed out because he never fit the timeline. In a league that rarely waits, being out of sync is often the same as being out of chances. Stunt number 3, injuries took what little margin he had left. By the time Tyler Ennis finally found opportunities outside the NBA, his margin for survival was already thin. His game relied on timing, balance, and control, not raw explosiveness, which meant even small physical setbacks carried heavy consequences. Unfortunately, what followed were anything but small. While playing overseas in Turkey, Ennis suffered a horrific ankle fracture that immediately halted his momentum. It wasn't an injury he could play through or manage quietly. Surgery was required, and the long recovery process removed him from competition just as he was trying to reestablish himself and possibly make it back to the NBA. For a player fighting to stay visible in a global market, time away was devastating. When he returned, the landscape had shifted again. Teams were younger, faster, and less patient. But before he could regain confidence or rhythm, another setback arrived, a torn Achilles. For a guard whose game depended on footwork, balance, and precise timing, that injury was especially damaging. It didn't just take away speed, it disrupted trust in his own movement. The physical toll was only part of the damage. Injuries also altered how teams evaluated him. Front offices began seeing risk instead of reliability. Minutes became harder to earn, contracts shorter, and opportunities more conditional. Each comeback required starting over, often with less patience than before. What made it especially cruel was that Ennis never relied on athletic dominance to survive. His value came from control, intelligence, and efficiency. Once injuries chipped away at those foundations, there was little margin to work with. Tyler Ennis didn't lose his career in a single moment. It slipped away gradually through injuries, timing, and circumstance until the game he once mastered no longer had room for him. And by the time his body was finally ready again, the league had already moved on, leaving him with only flashes of what seemed possible and no real space to reclaim it. All in all, Tyler Ennis' story is more about timing than anything. He entered the game with intelligence, discipline, and a level of maturity that usually generates longevity. But basketball doesn't reward preparation alone. It rewards evolution, physical margins, and opportunity. And Ennis found himself on the wrong side of all three. He wasn't reckless with his career, he didn't waste talent or lose focus. He simply arrived during a shift in the sport that didn't favor his strengths, then suffered injuries that erased what little margins he had to adapt. By the time his body caught up, the league, as mentioned, had already moved on. That's what makes his story, in my opinion, quietly tragic. Not because he failed, because he didn't. He's still playing today, but because he did so many things right and still couldn't outrun circumstance. For players like Ennis, success isn't about talent or effort. Sometimes it's about timing, fit, and a little luck. And when those things don't line up, even the most prepared players can fade from view, remembered only by those who saw how good they really were. Salute, much respect, but for these reasons, his growth was stunted. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth, and I'm out.